I'm soaring, friends. I am Vitaly Portnikov. After the Russian strike on Slavutich's energy infrastructure, it became known that the objects of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, with the so-called sarcophagus over the fourth power unit, are overestimated without electric posts. The Ministry of Energy of Ukraine notifies sharply. Energopostic is so-called confinement. The main object is the fourth unit of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, and running ahead of the release of radioactive materials at the Kalishny. So we can also talk about the most careless situation from the Chernobyl nuclear for the entire period of the Russian-Ukrainian war. Renisha did not cut her hair in 2020, another Kola lesson, on the territory of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The Russian occupiers showed up for a short period. So it is necessary to litter the situation on the injection of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. You will solve some risky situations on aphids, tied up because of the Paris SS. He grew up on the 23rd. The nuclear power plant was excluded from the view of the head Gerald, and Pavlev's reserve was overgrown with backup diesel generators at Ya, to ensure the operation of the Tilka station for 10 days against the offensive. The IAEA already says that such a situation is unstable from the nuclear point of view. It is possible to turn on the backup systems of the drive to the Dumka of Director General Magatar Pale before the melting of the nuclear floor. However, to Russia, you do not give up, it is absolutely leaking, because for the Russian roots, nuclear blackmail is frequent veins from Ukraine, frequent beards for Ukrainian surrender, and surrender to the approach to a real nuclear catastrophe. And yak in this tool to demonstrate the seriousness of the Russian numbers. You are arresting for everything not by the tilky behavior of Russian politicians. In the right to shove a nuclear dump from the Russian-Ukrainian war, but I'm going to go and continue my own to our Ukraine. And it is also tied to nuclear power plants. On the very cob of Russian-Ukrainian guilt, Cheek and Putin, thinking about the blitzkrieg, were often on the plan in the Kremlin. And in order to make plans with the gums failed, the Russian Federation has come to a new stage of blackmail. She twisted the situation at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in order to show the seriousness of the power structures. Tied up with the blackmail of Ukraine, these are Western Ukrainians. And such a thing is ready before hitting the energy of the places of satellites in nuclear power plants, as well as Bud Kaludina from the unfinished higher retinue to notify. Another blow to the energy waste of the place of the satellite of the nuclear power plant. And the most such place for the Chernobyl nuclear power plant is already rich in tragedy at Pripyat, and glory to serious problems at the nuclear power plant itself. And I mean, what are we talking about Chernobyl, because they are in a difficult emergency camp, then the concoctions of energy can extremely produce domains of the radiation situation from a non-lucky inheritance to all not tilky for Ukraine, but for neighboring Belarus. Yes, I am aware of such, that there are frequent ham zones, and for European Ukrainians I will still get an accident. Seriously. We are my spravu from absolutely dvashnaya, without seeing those who are Nikola Narukovov Annie. Human Annie that can inherit their aggressive day. and practically overgrown with the same pit before the situation, I went to Moscow at the VNNs. From the Cobb, the doors are absolutely stunned in a critical situation, and for the same reasons, to sort out the inheritance, yak. Tell him it was with the undermining of Kakhovskaya. Well, extremely and Bakhim, even with the last days and autumn, Russia has been hitting the Ukrainian energy infrastructure. It is already light overestimated, often on the territory of the Chernobyl region, is included with the regional center. The actual substation Obslugovaya Chernobyl can also be said about the fact that 300,000 Hromadians of Ukraine have been completed without electricity, and in the Chernobyl region. It is already being installed when Ukrainians forget, and the schedules are turned on. That's how everyone strikes the Dnieper. In the legacies, it was so light turned on in the Diki districts of the regional center. With this rank, we can say that Russia, starting a new stage of blame for the eviction against Ukraine. And the most strikes on infrastructure, the most strikes on energy. With an attempt to freeze Ukraine. I haven't done it yet, and so in the winter of 2025-2026 can be identified as one of the headlines in the Russian aggression against the Ukrainian rear, the greatest days. The fact that Putin Nikola is not with the fact that he failed to inherit for objective reasons, but Namagay, well. And it is known in such situations not to bring the ruin of the Ukrainian energy industry with a new sample. The Russian political PPR to include in the plans of the Rune and nuclear power plants can still become a serious problem. I have already had on Tilky for Ukraine, allies for Belarus, and for those regions of Ukraine today occupied by the Russian army and for the territory of the Russian Federation itself. In Tim, what is the process of the Russian president's Baidu to the powerful population on the problems on the territory of Russia? Not in human ideas and about his Namagany, the revenge taken from the Russian-Ukrainian war. And I will accept Ukraine before the surrender to Russia, the basics before the nuclear catastrophe of Ukraine. I am Putin. I am not ready to provo yet. So with her, the blackmailers are ready to blackmail with their readiness. So it is necessary to be ready before the new aggressive actions of the Russian and Tilka problems with the infrastructure of Russia itself. And Temrevo in Russian places, according to the recently reduced electricity Belgorod. Tilky Kola about Muscovite St. Petersburg, I will accept the president of the Russian Federation. And it's so political, and in Russia there are evil plans. At the same time, the plan strikes at the nuclear power plants of Ukraine, at the places of the satellite, the workshop of power plants. Provokes absolutely no wedding of the Dick's inheritance in the near. He also talks about the fact that we can unhealthy glust of the Russian political. I wouldn't. It is necessary for Zosky in Ukraine. I want to be vaccinated with their day. And they will be able to successfully diet against the cruel and undated inheritance of their ideas in a heap. Diakuyu. Finish on the topic of the channel, subscribe to it, subscribe to my social on the Patreon channel. This helps to develop these resources into a sponsorship function for YouTube itself.